The little girl was standing beside a trash can when the CEO saw her, clutching a crumpled brown lunch bag against her chest, as if it contained something more valuable than gold. Rainwater ran down her thin coat, her shoes were soaked through, and her face was pale with hunger. The CEO had already taken 3 steps past her when he heard the words that stopped him cold. "Please, sir, don't throw away my lunch." He turned around, expecting to see a child protecting a half-eaten sandwich. He had no idea that what was inside that bag would force him to question everything he believed about success, money, and the people he had ignored for years. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness can change someone's life and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. You never know whose heart might need a story like this today. It was a cold Tuesday morning in Chicago, Illinois, and 38-year-old Nathaniel Brooks, CEO of Brooks and Hale Technologies, had just walked out of his company's headquarters after another exhausting board meeting. His company occupied 20 floors of a glass tower overlooking the city, and Nathaniel had spent the last 15 years building it from a small software firm into a multi-million-dollar business. Employees knew him as disciplined, demanding, and almost impossible to impress. He rarely stopped to talk to anyone outside the executive floor. To him, every minute was measured in contracts, deadlines, and profits. That morning, however, something happened that no spreadsheet could explain. Near the side entrance of the building, a security guard had placed several discarded lunch bags beside the trash area. The company cafeteria had rules about leftover food, and anything unclaimed at the end of the day was thrown away. Nathaniel was walking toward his car when he noticed a small figure searching nervously through the bags. The girl couldn't have been more than 11. Her name, he would later learn, was Grace Miller. She lived with her mother in a tiny apartment several blocks away, and every morning her mother packed her a lunch before leaving for a cleaning job. Grace saw Nathaniel looking at the bags and quickly grabbed one. Her hands trembled as she held it tightly. Nathaniel assumed she had been stealing food from the company's trash, and his first reaction was irritation. He told her to step away from the garbage. Instead of running, Grace looked up at him with frightened eyes and whispered that he must not throw away her lunch. Nathaniel stared at the bag in her hands. He told her it was just food, and there would be more tomorrow. Grace lowered her eyes and shook her head. She quietly explained that there might not be another lunch tomorrow. Something in those words unsettled him. Grace carefully opened the brown bag. Inside was a small peanut butter sandwich, an apple, and a folded piece of paper. Nathaniel expected a note from a schoolteacher, or perhaps a child's drawing. But when Grace tried to hide the paper, Nathaniel gently asked what it was. She hesitated before handing it to him. The paper contained a short handwritten message from her mother. It said that she was sorry the lunch was so small, but she had divided the groceries carefully because they needed to make what little money they had last until Friday. At the bottom was a sentence that made Nathaniel's chest tighten. "Mommy promises we'll eat better soon. Please don't worry about me." Nathaniel looked at Grace, then at the sandwich. He asked why she had been searching through the trash when she already had lunch. Grace explained that the bag had accidentally been thrown away by a cafeteria worker after her mother dropped it near the building while delivering cleaning supplies. Grace had come after school to look for it because her mother had told her that wasting even one meal was something they could not afford. Nathaniel suddenly realized that the lunch wasn't simply a sandwich. It represented a mother working long hours, a child trying not to complain, and a family surviving one day at a time. He asked Grace where her mother worked. She pointed toward the rear entrance of his own building. Nathaniel felt a strange chill. He went inside and asked the receptionist about the evening cleaning staff. A few minutes later, he discovered that Grace's mother was named Rebecca Miller, a temporary cleaning worker who had been coming to the building for nearly 8 months. Her hourly wage was among the lowest paid by the contractor serving Nathaniel's company. Worse, Rebecca had recently missed several shifts because her apartment's heating system had failed, leaving her sick and unable to work. Nathaniel pulled up the contractor's records and found something disturbing. The company was charging Brooks and Hale nearly twice what it paid the cleaners. For months, Nathaniel had approved invoices without ever asking where the money went. That evening, instead of leaving for his expensive downtown apartment, Nathaniel walked through the service entrance and found Rebecca finishing her work. She looked exhausted. Her hands were red from cleaning chemicals, and her coat was so thin that she kept rubbing her arms to stay warm. Nathaniel told her about Grace and the lunch bag. Rebecca immediately began apologizing, embarrassed that her daughter had been searching through garbage. But Nathaniel stopped her. For the first time in years, he wasn't looking at an employee, a contractor, or a number on a report. He was looking at a mother who had been carrying a burden silently. The next morning, Nathaniel called an emergency meeting. He ordered a complete review of every cleaning and cafeteria contract. He discovered several families working around his company who were barely surviving while executives discussed bonuses and office expansions. Within weeks, he changed the company's policies. Cleaning workers received higher wages, paid sick days, health assistance, and emergency housing support. The cafeteria created a program allowing employees and their families to take home safe, untouched food instead of throwing it away. Nathaniel also established a small emergency fund for workers facing unexpected hardships. But the biggest change happened inside Nathaniel himself. He began eating lunch in the company cafeteria instead of his private executive dining room. He learned employees' names. He listened to their stories. And every Friday, he visited a local community center where Grace and other children received free meals and tutoring. Months later, Nathaniel saw Grace again. She ran toward him carrying a lunch bag. This time, it was bright red and filled with fresh food. She handed him a small folded piece of paper. Nathaniel opened it and found a drawing of a huge heart surrounded by tiny people. Underneath it, Grace had written, "Thank you for seeing us." Nathaniel stood silently, holding the drawing as tears filled his eyes. He had spent years believing that success meant building something large enough for the world to notice. But that little girl had taught him something far greater. Sometimes success is simply noticing the person everyone else walks past. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe so we can continue sharing stories that remind us that one small act of compassion can change an entire life. And before the story ends, comment, "Kindness matters," if you believe no one should ever have to choose between dignity and a meal. Nathaniel never forgot that rainy morning in Chicago. He kept Grace's drawing framed on the wall behind his desk, directly beneath the photograph of his company's first office. Whenever another important meeting began, and the numbers on the screen seemed more important than anything else, he looked at that drawing and remembered the little girl who had whispered, "Don't throw away my lunch." Because the lunch was never the thing that changed everything. It was the moment he finally stopped to see the human being behind it.